Today is the Gwrych Castle Medieval Festival, which is to celebrate the history of the site. There's been a house here for nearly 1,000 years, and today we've got many entertainments going on, bringing the community together and to make the castle more prominent in the locality. So the Gwrych Castle Trust is 20 years old this month, and we are celebrating with a whole series of events. The castle was built in around about 1815 and was built by a man called Lloyd Hesketh Bamford Hesketh, and he wanted to create a monument for his mother's family, the Lloyds of Gwrych, who had lived on this site since the medieval period. So into the 20th century, Lloyd's granddaughter, the Countess of Dundonald, lived here, and she died. It was left to the king. He gave it back to the family, and it fell into a poor state of repair. Around about 1948, it reopened, and it was the showplace of Wales. Here there was places like, there's a dungeon with a chamber of horrors, they had jousting, Randolph Turpin trained here, and it became a really vibrant centre. It shut in 1987, so 30 years ago to the month, and it was bought by an American who allowed it to fall into dereliction. Then in the late 1990s, 1997, the New Age travellers were kicked out and the Castle Trust was set up. And since then, we've been fighting for the restoration of Gwrych, and we're on our way to seeing it back to how it used to be. Coming today to the Gwrych Castle Medieval Festival, I'd like to introduce the Mayor of ABERGELE, Councillor Dalith McRae, who's going to officially open today's proceedings.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Mark Baker. Well, it's a pleasure for me to be here today in this very iconic building, which is admired by many wide and far along the North Wales coast as a beautiful building. And I'm so pleased about the restorations of the gardens, and you've worked so hard with the gardens and the grounds and all the volunteers. And excellent, well done to you all. But we mustn't forget about the vision and the dedication of a young man at one time as a school child who brought Gwrych to the knowledge, if you like, and to the wider community and to eminent people. And his vision and his dream is becoming a reality. And I hope it continues to be so. And Mark, very well done, and thank you. And now I officially open this 20-year...
Watch your feet, Madam Mayor.
Officially open this medieval fair. There we go.
Come closer, come closer. I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story of something that happened down in this valley, just down here. Did you know this valley down here was known as the bloodiest place in the Principality? And this is a story about a young man who was never meant to be king. So this young man, our hero, Richard, he had a grandfather who was out to claim kingdoms, conquer the world. He was going to build his dominion across the known world. He would fight anybody that came along. He'd fight the Welsh, the English. He'd fight the English in places if they came against him. He would fight the Scots, he would fight the Irish, he would fight the French. He would take on board anybody that would help him regain his kingdom, the kingdom that England used to rule over. So this shows you what this grandfather was like. He's in battle in France. His son his oldest son is just 17. He says to his son, "It's your turn now to lead my men into battle." He does give him two of his trusted knights, which upsets the son, but the son is determined to prove his father that he is a knight. But as the battle progresses, the son's losing, so one of the knights comes to the king and says, "You need to send reinforcements, your son's going to die." Edward, our king, says, "He's my son. If he's really my son, he'll fight and he'll win. If he's not my son, he'll die in battle, and that's okay." Anyway, the son comes through on the battlefield. Edward the king knights his son, Edward, and that is the highest honour a man could ever have, to be knighted on the battlefield. And Edward, who becomes known as the Black Prince, is a strong, feisty young man. He knows where he's going, he knows what he wants. He is a warrior. He refuses to marry the person that his father wants for him, and he marries Joan, the Maid of Kent. Now I want you to hold on to that part of the story for a moment. And he goes on to have many children. So he has 2 sons though, and all looks great. So our hero is the second son, Richard. So again, we've got Edward the King, Edward the Black Prince, Edward the oldest son, and Richard the second son. The eldest son dies. This puts Richard up there as the next one to inherit from his father. Then the Black Prince, for all his fighting, finishes up getting wounded, dies of some horrible disease, as people were really great at doing in the medieval times. And so we have the king and our hero, who is a gentleman. He's not a warrior. He was never meant to be king. He's got a soft heart, a soft spirit. He's a people person. He likes the nice things in life. He doesn't want to fight, but he is the heir apparent. But it's okay. He's only 3 when his father dies, and the king's still alive. He's got years to go. Suddenly, the king gets sick, probably early stages of dementia, starts doing some really weird things, all sorts of things goes on, and the taxes are going up. And at the age of 10, our hero's 10, his grandfather dies. Suddenly, he's made king at the age of 10. He has lords in charge who help him with things, who make decisions, but they have to put taxes up. They have to pay for all the wars that our King Edward was doing, and they have to pay to rebuild the treasury. Now, one of the people, again, you need to remember this, that was one of the people who was helping our hero Richard be king was his uncle, John of Gaunt. And John of Gaunt has a son, Henry, who's a similar age to our Richard. So again, hold these things. So they raise taxes. The people in the town, in the country, decide to revolt against these taxes. And they rise up. Now this again is amazing. They all rise up across the country at the same time. And this is happening in the days before mobile phones, before intercommunication. They manage to rise at the same time. The people from Kent march on London. Because the others are coming from the north, it's too far to come. They get stopped along the way. They never make it. But the people of Kent make their way into London. They come across, at this point, there's only one bridge that you can come into to London. And they're in. They get in, they're burning, they're pillaging, they're causing absolute mayhem. The knights they're struggling to hold this in place. Slowly the knights, the townspeople win back some stuff. Also, the people of Kent, the peasants of Kent, get tired and move out to a field to wait. Richard, our king, is a people person. He says, I need to deal with this. So he rises up, he places his crown on his head, he gets on his horse and rides out to the field. His rulers, the people who are supporting him, tell him he's crazy, he's going to be killed on the field there. But he rides out and he stands there in front of the people and says, go home. I'll deal with this, I'll get rid of your taxes, but go home, just disperse. No one will be punished for it. I'm the king, I promise this. Our Richard's only 15 at this point, but he promises as the king. Well, he becomes higher in status, but his lords decide that this is not the right thing to do. You can't pardon people that have revolted against the hierarchy. So actually they go out and they kill the leaders. Richard's very angry about this and sets out to get rid of those who don't. So slowly he's building his power base. Next in line, so and also the reason that, again, you remember this bit, why the people accepted him to speak to him was because his mother, Joan of Kent, the people said, if he's half Kentish, we will accept him. We will accept what he says. So again, remember this, that was so it wasn't if his father hadn't married the person he did, would the people have listened to Richard? Hold these things. Now, Richard gains in status, but one thing he's nervous of is his uncle, John of Gaunt, and his cousin, Henry. So he finds a way of setting up a meeting that Henry and somebody else are going to go in a tournament together. But he banishes the pair of them. He banishes Henry, so he cannot, because of his fear of him. Henry is very angry about this, and as Richard grows, he marries twice. Neither wife gives him a child. Richard has no children. He's still young though. He's only in his 30s. But Henry of Bolingbroke decides to come back because Henry's father dies, John of Gaunt dies, and Richard will not let Henry come across to mourn for his father, to bury his own father. All this is going on, and what happens is Richard is fine. Henry comes over, raises people. The people of the country don't like Richard because he's too gentle. He's not, even though he's lowering taxes, they're not fighting. They don't like the idea. The knights and the lords around him, they like battle. They like claiming land. They like Henry because he's a fighter. He's a warrior. So, while all this is going on, Henry comes in. Richard has fled to Ireland. He comes back across from Ireland. He's at Conway Castle. He is safe at Conway Castle. He's there. He's ensconced in the walls. The people are pleased to see him. They like him. Henry has just landed and is making his way across. Percy, a Duke of Northumberland, comes to Conway Castle, says to Richard, come on, it's time to make your peace with your cousin. You know, make him your heir apparent. Make it safe. The country needs this. But come on, come safely. So Richard sets off with his entourage, coming along the road from Conway Castle. As he gets to this valley down here, Henry has ridden along through here with his army. They meet in the valley just down here. Richard comes. There's a battle. Of course there's a battle. That Richard, when he sees this, is not going to come willingly, but he gets captured by Henry. And for our hero who never wants to be king, this is the end for him. Henry captures him, takes him back to one of his friendly castles. Richard is never seen again. And that is the end of our poor man who never wanted to be king, who is betrayed in the field down here. Remember though, the moral of this story is, watch who you trust and nothing happens by chance.
Sing cuckoo, grow with seed and blow with me, and spring it wood anew. Sing cuckoo, you now bleateth after lamb, loth after calf the cow. Bullock started but departed, Mary sing cuckoo. Cuckoo, cuckoo, well singst thou cuckoo, no cease to sing it now. Summer is a-coming in, loudly sing cuckoo. Grow with seed and blow with mead, and spring and wood anew. Sing cuckoo, you now bleateth after lamb, loth after calf the cow. Bullock started but departed, Mary sing cuckoo. Cuckoo, cuckoo, well singst thou cuckoo, no cease to sing it now. Summer is a-coming in, summer is a-coming in, grow with seed and blow with mead, and spring with seed and blow with mead, spring with good anew. Sing a bleat after lamb, loth after calf, you na bleateth after lamb, Mary sing cuckoo. Departed, Mary sing cuckoo, Mary sing cuckoo, no cease to sing it now, no cease to sing it, no cease to sing it now. Summer is a-coming in, loudly sing cuckoo. Grow with seed and blow with mead, and spring and wood anew. Sing cuckoo, you now bleateth after lamb, loth after calf the cow. Bullock started but departed, Mary sing cuckoo. Cuckoo, cuckoo, well singst thou cuckoo, no cease to sing it now. Summer is a-coming in, summer is a-coming